This video is powered by Dr. Cinik, one of the world's leading hair transplant centres and a top choice among football superstars. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link below for your free consultation.
AFTV, Bournemouth 2, Arsenal 0. Our first league defeat of the season. I'm here with Sharoy. Sharoy, not the result we needed today.
Catastrophe, start to finish. If you're talking about a team that could potentially go top if they won the game, when you know that Liverpool have a difficult game against Chelsea tomorrow and you know that you have to be near enough perfect against Manchester City, who have a game that you'd expect them to win, there was no option but to win today. It was disappointing to see that Saka wasn't in the lineup, but even then, I think you'd agree with me, when we saw the lineup, there wasn't anyone there that sat there and said, well, because of this team selection, we don't think that we ought to be winning this game. Nor should there ever be a situation where Arsenal Football Club should look at a lineup solely due to injuries and feel as though they can't beat Bournemouth. But the way in which we performed, aside from maybe 2 or 3 players, from start to finish, with and without 11 men on the pitch, was nothing short of inexcusable today. And this isn't going to be the most positive fan cam for obvious reasons.
I think that's fair.
So I need to preface it by saying this isn't me sitting here questioning the manager's future, questioning our ability to mount a title challenge, questioning how good a team we are. But this gave rise to some really, really concerning recurring themes. One of which was on display at the beginning of Arteta's tenure and has now shown itself again today. Immaturity that leads to red cards. Now, I know these aren't the dangerous player red cards that we used to get, but if we're looking at the Rice red card earlier in the season, you can excuse that. But then Trossard goes and gets sent off for something very similar. He shows that we don't have that level of maturity, and that's in one of the biggest games of the season that he shows that level of maturity. And I can talk about Trossard again today when it comes to the composure that he displays or doesn't display when he's playing that ball backwards, putting Saliba in a horrible position. But Saliba, again, for all the praise that we give him, that doesn't mean that he's bulletproof. That doesn't mean that he's immune. That was idiotic today. That was idiotic. Why give the referee a decision to make when you are one of the quickest centre-backs in the Premier League?
In the world.
In the world. And whoever is next to you, it doesn't matter. They have a lot of work to do if you're the guy that's next to them. I mean, I don't know what to say. This isn't going to be the most organised fan cam, man. Let's roll with the next question.
No, it's cool. It's fair enough. Well, look, obviously, it was a heavily rotated team. Obviously, that wasn't Mikel's fault. There was a lot of injuries and stuff like that. But no Saka and no Odegaard specifically, our 2 best players, arguably. When Manchester City have their 2 best players, and for example, Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne are missing, and they can still replace them with fantastic players who are going to almost guarantee them a result still, does that show for you that we're still quite a bit behind Manchester City in that sense of squad depth?
Yeah, but we knew that. We knew that. I mean, look, people are focusing on Saka and Odegaard, but one of the reasons that we couldn't play Trossard in that Odegaard position was because Martinelli was a fitness concern too. Yeah. Right? So we then had to change basically 3 of what our first choice front four would be. Now, if you're changing 3 of what your first choice front four would be, you might expect there to be some sort of difficulty when you're in front of goal. Mm-hmm. But that was a back four that we all would have been happy with, even if we had a fully fit back line.
Agreed.
And that was what a lot of us would call our best midfield. So why couldn't we get the service to the front men the way in which we wanted to before the red card? Do you see what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot to be said for squad depth. I get it, but today for me isn't necessarily the day for that. And I've heard a lot of talk about it already, and I've seen a lot of it online. But I go back to the fact that when I saw that lineup and when I saw that bench, yeah, I felt comfortable enough for us to beat Bournemouth. This was. I can run through it. David Raya today. Yep. Shocker.
Yeah, agreed.
Complete lack of composure on the ball, not just in one instance, but a number. And I'm not talking about the penalty here, by the way. I'm talking about things that came before it. If I'm looking at Ben White today, I wouldn't describe it as a shocker, but to the extent that there are deficiencies in his game, I think Semenyo showed you what they are. Yeah. Got him behind far too easily. And in fact, Semenyo did the same when he switched flanks, and he did it with Calafiori too. I actually thought Partey and Rice did absolutely everything they could. Mm-hmm. I don't have a bad word to say about either of them. I thought Partey was doing everything he could to protect the ball, everything he could to help out defensively, and I thought Rice tried to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and cover some distance. But when he got there, he looked around and he was like, well, who do I give it to? Like, who do I give the ball to? And now let's look at the front three. Kai Havertz again did everything he could, man. He tried everything, but there was no one around him to help out. It was a lost cause for him. On the right, Raheem Sterling, there wasn't much end product there, but everything was going through him. He looked bright. Yep. You know, he looked bright. And on the left, I mean, the only player on the left I can talk about is Martinelli. Before the game, I was praising Martinelli. I was saying, man, you've come off the bench and you've changed the game and you've got yourself into good positions, and I hope you can do the same thing again today, my friend. We were lucky not to be 1-0 down at that point because Semenyo should have scored early in the second half. Martinelli has an opportunity for us to pull off a wonderful smash and grab and warrant a place in the starting 11 against Liverpool. It is incomprehensible to me that a professional footballer who has been around at Arsenal Football Club for this long can't bury that chance. I don't need to say any more about it. There are moments in games, right? There are moments in games. That was one of them where I looked at it and I said, okay, now I know that we're not winning this game. The saddest thing for me today and the most deflating thing, Frank, is that there wasn't really a moment throughout the duration of the 90 minutes where I looked at it and I felt confident that we were going to win. And I can't remember the last time that I felt that way about an Arsenal team. Now, I know that a lot of people might come along and say, yeah, but the season's not done. It's a long season. I completely understand that. But there are recurring themes that are rearing their ugly heads again, and they do give rise for concern. I mean, one of them that I was talking about was immaturity and a potential for ill discipline. Yep. But the other is a lack of creativity. The other is when Saka and Odegaard aren't around, what do you do? You know, the other is how many chances do we need to create to actually score, because we don't take gilt-edged chances like the one that Martinelli had and, in fact, the one that Marino had. You know, chance creation is another recurring theme. These are all themes that, with respect, we don't necessarily talk about with Manchester City, and for some of them we don't necessarily talk about with Liverpool.
Absolutely. Well, listen, obviously just on that topic of, creativity, there was definitely a lack of that in the midfield three today, and obviously we had a midfield three of Partey, Declan Rice and Mikel Merino making his first Premier League start as well. Do you think it was a mistake to move Leandro Trossard out of that midfield three, considering that he would have been essentially the only real creative player in that midfield three, and put him back out on the left?
What was the other option? Play Trossard in there and start an unfit Martinelli with the risk of aggravating a calf injury on the left-hand side?
I mean, you could have
maybe
potentially
Ethan Ranieri.
Could have potentially put Sterling out on the left and had Jesus on the right. Potentially.
You could have, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. I don't know, maybe that would have been slightly more beneficial, but I have to say that Jesus, even with the cameo today, didn't necessarily give me any cause for encouragement to suggest that the result would have been any different. I'm not going to be Captain Hindsight here, man. I didn't look at that lineup and think it was a deficient lineup. No. And when the lineup came out, I altered my prediction and I went 1-0 to the Arsenal, because I didn't think it was going to be free-flowing. I didn't think we'd have loads of chances. And even though we didn't look great before the red card, I think it might have been a 1-0 to the Arsenal if we had 10 men, but we didn't. And we're now in a position where 8 games played, we've dropped points in 3 of them. The margin for error is now so small. I classified that Liverpool game as a must-win game before this result. Now we have no choice but to win that game. We have no choice but to win that game. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that we have a game in 3 days or whatever it is, because Shakhtar need to come to the Emirates and Shakhtar need to hold smoke. Because honestly, that team, they've done a lot of good, but that team needs to put in a bit of an apology to the fans after that performance today, right? Because there were so many players that, in my opinion, some of them are already on the verge of the world-class bracket today, if you're talking about people like Saliba. Some of them have been our player of the season to date, if you're talking about people like David Raya. Some of them are fan favourites, if you're talking about people like Gabriel Martinelli. Today, diabolical performances. Absolutely. There is no excuse for it.
Absolutely. Just to round things off here, any positives to take from this game?
I thought Partey and Rice looked good. Any concerns as to Partey's fitness in terms of whether he still has the legs in him? Today, I think he dispelled that, because he was going right until the last minute. I thought Ethan looked good when he came on. And this is just me absolutely spinning it, and I don't even know if I believe what I'm about to say, because I think Leicester and Southampton should have been the wake-up calls, to be honest with you, because we conceded goals there when we shouldn't have, and it was far too close for comfort. But now we've lost in the league. If we ever needed a reminder of the fact that you can't bring a knife to a gunfight in the Premier League, today was it. No more room for error, because if there is anything of this ilk over the next 2 or 3 weeks, people are writing season obituaries when it comes to the Premier League before December. And whether that's premature or not, that is what we're up against when you're up against the Herculean Manchester City. And I remember everyone sitting there when Rodri got injured saying it's Arsenal season. Has to be Arsenal season. And what I said at the time was, he's down. Who's to say it couldn't happen to some more of our players? I know we've got Ødegaard out, but God forbid, what if something happened to Bacary Sagna and we had to negotiate a couple of games without him? Well, here's your answer. And now we're going to have to do this without Saliba too? There is a reasonable prospect that we could be going into the Liverpool game now without Saliba, without Ødegaard, and maybe without Saka. 3 of our players that I think made it into the PFA team of the year. It's not looking good, bruv.